shut up. Gosh, I mean, can you believe this guy with all his crappy epic music? Well, anyway, what's up? I'm Andrew Maximov from ArtIsAVerb.info, and it is my great pleasure to bring you some of the behind-the-scenes look on my latest personal project called The Desert. Now, if you haven't seen the original video, then you probably want to make sure to go ahead and do that right now, because first of all, this video could really spoil some of the fun that I hope you'll have with the video, and also because some of the things we will be talking about here will be much more understandable to you if you will have a solid understanding of the subject at hand, which is the environment in the video. Yeah, also I really wanted to tell you guys that out of the two making of video, this one about conception and the other one about technical stuff, I really find this one to be of the most importance. In computer graphics, I really believe that all kinds of technology exist only to support artistic vision. So first and foremost, your environments should hold their own as a piece of artwork, completely disregarding any kind of technology they have. And this is something that I really struggled for in this environment, and I hope it shows in some way. And I definitely made quite a bunch of mistakes and quite a few discoveries for myself, and this video will be about me sharing them with you. So hopefully when you make something grand and totally kick my ass, you'll waste much less time on it. So let's get going.
What do we have here, Johnny?
Okay, so here's our sort of a loose plan of things that we're going to discuss right now. Basically, as you can see, the first point is to choose your subject wisely. And I mean, I just can't stress this one enough. I personally had to learn the hard way that a good artist is all about showing people something worth seeing. I mean, as simple as this. If you put a huge amount of hard work and effort into your environment, and then someone puts absolutely the same amount of effort into their work, but their original idea was better than yours, then they always are going to end up with a better looking environment. And this is something you should be very aware about, because you don't want all your hard work just to go to waste because of the poor choice of the idea in the beginning. And I mean, for a lot of artists, this happens kind of impulsively, you know, you just see something that really inspires you, that makes you want to do a whole environment about it, and then you just start researching and etc, etc, etc. But it really has to be a lot of careful consideration of what would be worth seeing. And I mean, the biggest problem I usually see with the environments by beginning artists, for example, is that they usually tend to make environments around objects. And I mean, it's sort of logical, because all of us start from doing props and everything, then we just gradually grow and we see those environments as just a collection of props that are somehow, you know, restrained by the space around them. But the more you delve into it, the more you realize that it's not actually the case. Then the good environments are always about the big details, the big shapes, the big spatial relations, the colors, the atmosphere, the lighting. I mean, for example, when I was making my dock environment, first and foremost, I made the sky dome, I set up the lighting, I added all the rain effects that I needed, and at that moment I had absolutely nothing in my scene, yet I was very, very confident that it is going to work, because the atmosphere and the mood were there. The feeling that I wanted to convey with it were there, and that's basically all you need. So when you choose your subject, first and foremost thing you should concentrate on is thinking of it in terms of big details. And this is really important, because no matter how awesome the tank that you want to showcase looks, or how much you like Asian architecture, unless you can have a solid frame composition in your environment, unless you can have a very interesting dramatic lighting, unless you can really add some strong vibrant colors that are going to resonate with your audience, it will probably make little sense. I mean, you just won't achieve the result you're looking for, and that actually produces a lot of frustration, because I perfectly realize that you'll put a lot of hard work into your environment, but still it will lack something as subtle as beauty, but still it is essential, and you have to think about it from the get-go. And I mean, if you look at the way I approach this environment, I have a ton of reference. I mean, this personal project had an unusually long pre-production phase for me. I mean, I spent around a month and a half, or maybe even 2 months, just browsing through Wikipedia articles and all the pictures on the internet, just looking at stuff and thinking at stuff, and I just can't tell you how crucial this is. So this brings us to our second point, and that is choosing the right reference, or just what makes reference useful. And well, I guess I should know a thing or two about it, because while working with this project, I mean, I accumulated just a ton of reference on every single subject related to the environment. And once again, I think the main idea here is, just as in the previous point, is that big ideas are king. And this is somewhat of an overlooked aspect as I see it, because a lot of people, while collecting the environment, they usually just concentrate on the details. I mean, how would the architecture look, or how would the details look, the rocks, the grass, and everything. And I think as much as those references are really important and useful, first and foremost you should concentrate once again on the big details. So when you're searching for reference, search for mood reference, I don't know, color reference, lighting reference, composition reference. And here is the piece that I find really interesting, because it basically has very little visual information. I mean, you can even tell if it's a desert or not, or what's going on here, but I really felt that this piece kind of resonated with the composition I wanted for my first shot. That actually didn't happen that way, but still you can see that I saved it out, because I just wanted to reference the composition from this shot later on. That was all that I could do with this shot, but still I find it quite important enough to actually save it. And I think that that should be sort of your approach, where you just research the lighting and you research the colors and composition and just the ideas you could have with architecture and detail and everything. And it is of dramatic importance actually to do a vast amount of research, because it enriches your possibility to make choices. It gives you a whole arsenal of ideas that I guarantee you, absolutely guarantee you didn't have before. Because let's face it, none of us knows everything about everything, and especially about how everything looks. Even for such a pretty obvious subject as desert, I mean, I got a whole lot of reference, and basically it is here because it's very vast. I mean, I just saved out images that would be dramatically visually different, that I could use as a source of inspiration for me. And I mean, I basically give myself a palette that I make a choice from, that I just pick this colors and this from here and this from here. I mean, come on, something as basic as just sand and sky could be, you know, this almost white with this bluish cyanish kind of color in the sky, and then you have this completely yellow, almost greenish kind of sand, and all these kind of combinations. I mean, the saturated orange that just looks amazing with the saturated blue, and here's another example of it, and here's much less saturated orange with much less saturated blue, and it still looks great. And here are some whites, and here is something with the mountains in the background, and all of it actually just gave me an opportunity to choose from things I had no idea about. And I mean, the more you research, the more you give yourself these unexpected choices. For example, this one, it is an actual photo, a photo from the Pinnacle Desert that is in Australia. And when I first saw it, I was just, I mean, flabbergasted. I couldn't believe it was a photograph. This amazing rocks taken from the ground actually became a large part of my composition later on, and it only happened because I took the time to meticulously research a whole lot of pictures of the deserts. And I mean, I read a ton of articles on them and how these sand dunes are formed and what kind of desert are there, and everything basically starting from the natural processes that form them. And I mean, even after weeks of searching, I still found ideas that would just make me go wow, like this one for example. So I implemented this pretty late on in the development cycle, yet I absolutely know that if I haven't done all my previous research, I probably wouldn't come up to this. So it's all useful, it's all important, and you better be sure to research as much as you can, and even during production still keep up researching and allow yourself quite a bunch of time for it. And don't forget that you're looking not only for the details or the shapes, but you're looking for colors. You're looking for lighting situations, and you just think how you can use them. Okie dokie, so finally we've got to the third part, the third point of our little making of, and this one's called Concepting for Dummies. And dummy in this particular case is actually me. Why? Because, well, actually I'm not much of a concept artist. In fact, I'm quite a crappy concept artist. And with this environment, I really try to, you know, address that a bit, and obviously I'm still working on it, I'm gonna get better. But during the production of this environment, I really try to make quite a lot of concepts, and which is pretty unusual for me. I try to concept out everything I could before I got into real production, and I made quite a lot of mistakes and just, you know, figured some things out from the point of an environment artist. I was just trying to change this, you know, environment artist mentality towards more of a concept artist mentality a bit, and really discover what works and what not. And I really hope that it could be interesting for you. It's also kind of neat because I was, you know, on the both sides of the barricade at the same time. I was the producer of my concept art and I was the consumer of it. This stuff is really interesting, but first I think we're going to check out just the initial storyboard that I have. And since this video is also called Ideation, I just wanted quickly to run through you sort of the whole misses of the world, of the environment that we portrayed in the video. And basically the whole idea here was about discovering the lost civilization, or just even not a civilization. I mean, it's up to you to decide whether there was some kind of civilization there. We're just discovering the remains of it. Maybe there are some people there, maybe there aren't, but it was supposed to be really neat. It was interesting because, I mean, browsing through tons and tons of references, I was doing my research. It was really an amazing feeling of this adventure because there are so many things in the world, such gorgeous, beautiful things with all the, you know, the carved details on the walls and just kind of carved temples in the rocks and all of that. That is pretty unusual, and it's still real and still amazing. And I really wanted to try and pass on this sense of amazement to the audience. And for that I had to do quite a lot of pre-production and, you know, thinking. And here we can see that there are quite a bunch of frames here that were made for sort of my initial idea of how the environment should turn out. And well, the logic behind this place is that it's actually a crater. The last shot that we see, it's actually a crater from a meteor that fell somewhere in the desert, and well, basically it ended up not landing on a bunch of sand but on a huge rock and left a huge, like a hole in their crater. And the thing about craters is that they usually create crater lakes at the bottom. So that was sort of the key idea for creating a sustainable living place, sort of like a hidden oasis in the middle of desert. And basically what these people, these tribal people that we see, their, you know, architecture in detail, what they did, they created sort of a keep in there, you know, like a fortress maybe, like Helm's Deep in Lord of the Rings. Or if somebody's familiar with ancient history, you might have noticed I have some shots of Masada in there, which was like a huge rock where the last of the Jewish rebels held their defense against the Roman Empire in 72 AD, I believe. So yeah, basically the idea is that this was a place that all these people sort of came in to hide from somebody who was attacking them. And well, basically we can see here that this staircase was supposed to be hidden. It was supposed to be activated and erected from the sand by some sort of mechanism, and there on the top we would have the entrance, and then there would be this door that just wouldn't open so lightly, and then there was supposed to be this huge slot canyon, which was just a gorgeous thing in itself, a slot canyon, and utilizing it there was, well, kind of neat. What's kind of interesting also to note is that there are quite a lot of snake referenced here, because I basically believe that these people would have something, because this long canyon would actually be considered as something connected with snakes. And if you look at the diary of the traveler that we see in the beginning of the video, or even just the images of which I posted separately, there is a line that says that the person who actually ran away from this place was murmuring constantly, and I mean being half conscious, that he has to return to the belly of the serpent. And that basically how I believe these people would see this place, as it was, you know, created by some, you know, higher mighty power that left this way in the shape of itself, of its body, like a snake maybe. So the detail actually kind of mimic it, and we'll see it a tiny bit later. But basically there was supposed to be this destroyed staircase that, well, the people trying to hide in there destroyed to further slow down their aggressors. And then there was supposed to be another sort of mechanism that was supposed to be also a puzzle that I really fleshed out in my head, and it wasn't the only puzzle. But so yeah, I kind of fleshed out quite a lot of puzzles for this one. It was interesting, even though they also didn't make it in the final cut, and there wasn't really a way to display them interestingly with just the silhouette as I displayed basically everything else, it was still really interesting. And so yeah, here was supposed to be this bridge that you would open up, and then you have to go through this, you know, mouth of the serpent, which obviously these people build, and it looked kind of, you know, scary, but still kind of fun. So yeah, and in here you had all these wooden poles that would just hold rocks up in there, and should you touch at least one of them, you would just create, you know, an avalanche, or not an avalanche, but just a rock shower. Let's call it that way, because it sounds badass. And yeah, and after that you would just finally be able to come out to this valley. And though this thing changed a lot, I mean, the initial idea stayed pretty much the same. Now, I obviously had to cut something due to time constraints because the project was pretty huge. One of the main challenges I see there was to trying to implement storytelling in the display of a static environment. I mean, I didn't really see it done much before, though I thought it would be really cool. And I also find that it's kind of a bit underrated. I mean, the way the modern environment artists do their personal projects, usually just by creating some space, you know, but usually the game environments are not only about space, but about spatial progressions, about how they change in time and kind of the rhythm they have, how their shapes change and lighting change and everything for creating you know, a smooth ride, a cohesive experience. And I really wanted to try this out here, and this is also why you can see this color ramp in here. Well, basically it's the color script, and even though once again it did change for me quite a lot, the initial idea was there, that I wanted to create a color progression throughout the whole environment so that you would feel different moods in different ways, and you could also recognize the particular part of the video you're looking at. We start with this warm yellow, and then we slowly transfer to orangish color, and then from that we kind of go down into the crater and get to a bit more brownish color, and then inside the temple we have this brownish, reddish, greenish kind of tones, and from there we go into the blues, and from the blues we come out into the violets, and from the violets we go to the reds, and again to the yellows and oranges, and then we wrap it up at the very end with a lot of greens. And as you can see, it's basically almost like a color ramp in there, and that was like a conscious choice and a conscious idea, and I really think that it helps you sell kind of the sense of gradual progression and tie the whole thing together. And you don't just create strong contrast, but you also have some, you know, transitions from one to another. So yeah, what we really are going to do right now, we're just going to look at just probably two concepts where I'll try to sort of explain my main lesson that I learned while trying to learn to teach myself how to do concept art. And basically here we have this first thumbnail. We can check out the more detailed version of it. Here's basically what it looks like. It's funny because I really considered it to be a piece of concept art, but now I just totally can see that it's absolutely useless. And why it's useless? Well, because I had an original idea already. I knew that I wanted to do something with the sand. I mean, there would be a desert, so there's lots of sand, and then there's this huge badass rock that was supposed to be, you know, standing right in front of you, menacing, with this 3-point perspective in here. It always looks kind of cool. Something with 3-point perspective, so yeah. And basically right here you were supposed to have the sledge, sticking out, and here, somewhere here, was supposed to be the temple. But what this concept did absolutely horribly wrong is that it didn't tell me nothing new at all. It's like it was just, I was checking up on my idea if it was sort of okay, and that's it. But that's not what concept art is about. Concept art should be about ideas, because when it came on to me later on as an environment artist, I really had to spend a huge amount of time researching again just to figure out what this damn rock should look like. And basically when I look at this picture, there are just no other detail, no other information. And your concept art is only good as the amount of ideas it gives you. And this gave me nothing, absolutely nothing at all. We can go ahead here and see that this is, well, a part of another sort of piece that didn't make it through. It was with the huge staircase. And basically it has absolutely the same problem as the previous concept, because it doesn't have any new ideas for me. It didn't do any sort of research. I didn't do any sort of research. I just sat down and tried to visualize something I already knew. It's really not that good. The only new stuff in here were these ocelots sitting here, but that's about it. So basically what I did, I just wasted a few hours painting out something that was no use to me. I mean, someone could have probably explained it was words, and it would be absolutely transparent what is desired here. So yeah, that's speaking about crappy concept art. I mean, I did quite a bunch of those. Oh, and now moving on to the subject of the concept that really worked. And this would be for this particular room. And basically here is the initial thumbnail. What could be a great testament of why this concept, this thumbnail really worked, is just how almost unchanged it made it into the final product. I mean, almost exactly the way we see it. And if we look for a more detailed variant, here it is. And why I do consider this a decent piece of concept art, pretty useful piece of concept art, is because it had everything figured out for me. I mean, as simple as this. When I started working with it first around as a texture artist, when I had to sculpt all the detail and everything, I didn't have to think much. And that's the key of the concept art, actually, because it eliminates a lot of the thinking and allows you to concentrate on production. Because when these two processes coexist, they really start messing with each other. So you really want to do all your thinking beforehand and then just go into the smooth production. And that was exactly the case here. I mean, I had all the little details figured out here, and I don't know if you really can see, but most of these images were photo sourced, and they were pretty low res. I mean, I can't even really make out some things on some of these plates, but that was okay. I mean, this concept had enough figured out for me, so the only research I needed to do was to search for a deeper level of detail, to invent some kind of more sophisticated detail. But I didn't have to go, you know, any levels up in terms of detail. I didn't have to think of the huge shapes and everything. And basically what this concept does is actually, since I've already told that most of these patterns were photo sourced, well, some of them were painted, since I just could have used, you know, all these photographs and just sculpted everything without the help of this concept, really, if you think about it, the main reason for this concept wasn't the details. It's actually quite important, is because once again we return to the idea of big details, and it is pretty vivid here, I hope, because this was actually created not to show the detail but to show their arrangement in space and to show middle scale detail and big detail, because, you know, we can see here this huge big ass entrance and this door, and it was supposed to be here, and I needed to know where it would be. And I mean, this huge detail in the center, I mean, it's not here to show me the particular kind of detail, but to tell me that there is something big. It could have changed quite a lot later on, and that would be okay, but it served its purpose to show me that there is this kind of detail of this kind of shape in this particular place. It was supposed to be a flat wall, but I really wanted to add the bigger scale details to make this wall look interesting, even if it was stripped of all the textures, of all the details. It was supposed to have some volumes that would be interesting to look at. And that's basically what's up with all these triangular protrusions. And I mean, this wall actually has quite a lot of storytelling to it. It was supposed to really tell what this environment is all about. If we look to the side here, we can see that there's this huge creature just stomping elephants and damn, you get it, you elephant, bam, and well, stuff like that. And here you can probably see, but there are just a bunch of riders riding towards the entrance. And you can see them in more detail if you follow the links in the description of the video. I posted all of the sculpts and they're quite detailed. I hope you like them. But anyway, all the living things that we see here are running away from those aggressors. As well as you have people here on carriages that are just trying to take away all their belongings and, I mean, save themselves. And well, basically they're doing the same. They're fleeing. And I really don't have people there, but I have a goat. I have quite a bunch of people later on, and here you have this huge statues that are all about, you know, being the idols and the goddesses. I mean, here's the protector, sort of god that was there, that was basically here to be menacing and kind of show that he's protecting this place. And there was this female goddess that was kind of supposed to bless this place. And on the top here we see also these guys that's supposed to be pretty scary. And if you look at the detail, I mean, the way I sculpted them, I really tried to convey that. I mean, these guys were supposed to look like if you go in there you're gonna get your ass kicked, because this place is protecting us with all the essence, with just the essence of it, with all the holy spirits that are there and everything like that. So yeah, and on top of that we have this more middle scale details, I mean, like these protrusions and everything. And I think they worked kind of nice for a flat wall. I mean, remember that it started out as being just a flat wall, and then it got all these layers. I mean, like this bottom border, and then another one, and then this shape, and then this column at the side, and then this kind of borders at the top, and then there's triangular protrusions, and then the snake shape sort of detail that are supposed to imitate their bodies meeting there on top and accentuating this entrance and the shapes going up. So it was really quite a sophisticated design for just a simple wall, and well, it was supposed to be a sophisticated wall. So yeah, this is something that it was all about. And once again, it wasn't about every little detail and the type of detail I was going to put in there, because I had reference for that. But their spatial arrangements, their composition, middle scale and large detail was all that this concept was really about. And it was really good, because once I got it later on as a modeler, I could just concentrate on what was the job at hand, which would be modeling and sculpting, and not thinking about it. And that is really awesome, because it makes for smooth work that keeps you pretty happy. So yeah, I really hope this was useful for you guys. And when you're gonna get down to concepting like me, when you're kind of coming from a bit of a different field, you'll maybe have a clearer understanding of what you need as an end result. Mad props to all the concept artists out there, because we as artists sometimes really get used to getting your concept art for granted, and it's basically your concept art that makes us look good. So it's really nice to give a little thought to the way things are made, and I'm really interested in it, and really hope to get better. But even though if this is something you're not willing to pursue, it's still worth knowing that it's a tremendously amazing process. Yeah. Moving on! Yoo-hoo! So yeah, the last very important thing about concepts is the concept of iteration. And I mean, it's not really a concept, I mean, it's just a well-known idea that you should iterate on your ideas and refine them and keep refining and refining them. But coming from a modeling background, I usually had just sort of a different approach, and I mean, I would just like to show it on the example of the temple entrance. I mean, this huge badass Petra-esque structure. And as you can see, I made some studies along the way with this thumbnail sketches, because it gave me an opportunity to just quickly brush through different ideas and see what would work and what direction I would feel I would like to go in. Let's put it that way. The strange thing is that being a modeler, how I usually used to work, that I gather a whole lot of reference, and then I just, you know, block things out, and then I just go to the smaller and smaller and smaller level of detail until I'm finally satisfied with the end result. But the thing is, that is, number one, it's pretty slow, and the other thing is, that just got me thinking after I went through the whole iterating process with this, is just how much of the good ideas do I miss out on not completely changing directions. And it was a very interesting thought, because something that was unusual for me is that with every single new iteration I did, and even though I, you know, changed directions now and then, I really felt that it was better than the previous one. And that's all there is to it. And I mean, as we discussed, that the biggest details are the single most important thing that usually will define your success in a way, and not the details, then probably these little thumbnail sketches would be the most important thing for the whole object, in my case, for this whole huge architectural structure. And in fact, I'm quite proud of the design, because while I was, you know, doing these little thumbnails and everything, I kind of managed to internalize the art styles that I drew inspirations from, and then figure out what I really wanted to do with it. So I could, you know, just redo it once again in the modeling phase, because I mean, looking at this particular concept, I didn't like it enough to create it actually that way in 3D. So yeah, I had to redo it, but I mean, all this research that I done during production of the things really gave me a great shapes and ideas and styles library in my head that I heavily relied on when remaking it, and such things, I don't know, as the square dome that you can see here. It's actually round, and it comes from southeastern Indian architecture, is style called Dravidian architecture. The idea to actually make it square was kind of nice, and I actually was really proud of that. Oh, and these recessions at the top of the entrance, they were also something new. And I mean, if there's any particular single piece that I am really proud in this environment, is this facade, because I really felt like a designer in there, like a, you know, like a concept artist. Even though I implemented all these ideas later on, I'm kind of happy to say that I think I came up with something unique that yet still feels familiar and grounded and rooted in reality. And that is what I was really shooting for, and that's what I worked pretty hard for, as would be with those pyramids. That is actually, you know, the pyramid is showcased at the very last shot, and basically I went with the number 2, and it's also sort of a fresh and unique design, at least that felt for me, from all the endless amounts of reference and, you know, analogs that I browsed through. So yeah, iterate, 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 then iterate again, then do something, and then scrape it, redo it, and then do it again, and then iterate on that a couple of times, and then throw it away. After a couple of such cycles, you might come up with something that you would really enjoy. And I mean, there was a whole lot of redoing in here. I mean, this particular rock that ended up being at the bottom of the crater also changed quite a lot of times. I mean, I can't even count. I mean, and here's just one of the work in progress shots that I need to give myself an idea of where I was headed, but it wasn't good enough, so I scrapped it. I mean, I scrapped the whole composition. It just didn't work right. And I mean, if we go over here, we can see another version of the rock and how it looked like, but it still wasn't good enough. So I scrapped it as well, and I made another one, and then I also made just a couple of other variants. So I think all in all, this huge rock structure ended up with around 8 iterations, and in no way be scared to throw out work. In fact, I figure that whenever you're doing something new, you'll have to throw away work, and it is just necessary, and there's nothing wrong about it. And wherever you have a choice, and you know that this doesn't feel right, this doesn't work okay, and you know that you might have to choose between redoing a whole lot of work or leaving something in your artwork that you don't particularly like, be sure to throw it away and redo it, because I mean, your audience is not going to care how tired you are or just, you know, how much more you had to do. If everything doesn't look up to par, it's always your fault. And well, that's the bottom line. You gotta make your audience enjoy what they see. And even though you will be a little late and you'll get demotivated because of it, believe me, you'll get much more demotivated if you end up spending, I don't know, 3 months on something instead of 4, and yet you're gonna get a crappy result in the end, and the feedback would be pretty negative or just not good enough. It's really not worth it. I mean, you just really have to take into consideration the amount of work you've inputted already, and how your sort of laziness and unwillingness to redo stuff later on would really just render so much hard work pretty useless, because people always focus on the bad stuff. So yeah, you make sure to be strong and do everything nice. So yeah, iteration, 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 iteration is crucial. And finally, we can go to our last point about exaggeration, because man, I'm starving, gotta finish this stuff up. Point number 4, exaggeration. It's also a very important and interesting one, and I'm gonna try to explain it to you on the example of the Chuck Moll statue that I have in my environment. And I mean, you probably think, hey, who's Chuck Moll? Who's that guy? But once I show you the picture, you instantly realize what I'm talking about. But you can see just how dramatically he's different from the way he ended up in the final composition. The thing is, I actually built him the way you can see him now. I actually made this sort of statue just the way it is in real life. And you know what? It looked like crap. I mean, it looked exactly like this guy does, but it looked like crap. And the sad part is that when you show it to people and they don't know who this guy is, what the statue is, what's the story of this statue, then basically they have no idea if it's supposed to be that way, or you just don't know how to make pretty models. You don't know anatomy. You build a guy with, you know, with disproportionately short legs, and he has square arms and just crooked, broken spine. It all looks very wrong. And if something looks wrong to your audience, the artist is always to blame. Even if such items exist in reality, no one cares. And that is a very important lesson, because you got to treat your artwork as an absolutely independent subject that your audience coming to check out absolutely doesn't have any kind of knowledge about. As simple as this, your audience could have no idea about all these cultures, all these statues that you want to show them, so when they're gonna see something that doesn't look cool, it's your fault. And it's kind of hard because you get really attached to all these, you know, references and real life kind of analogs. And it's kind of funny with the photographers a lot, because, you know, when they edit photographs and you say, hey, you could put a little more, you know, reddish in here, or you just can make it brighter. It's funny how often you get an answer sounding like, you should have seen the original. I mean, I've already put a lot. And that is a very, very destructive attitude to have towards your art, because the audience is never supposed to see the originals. The audience is supposed to see the final work that is kick-ass. So you should really, really, when working on something, try to forget about the original as much as possible. Once you got the initial idea, then you have to just sit down and figure out what would make this idea awesome. And not just, just grip this idea tight and not let it go. Be free to let it go. It's okay. It will make your artwork better. And also another thing that I would like to point out here is that you can see, even though this guy changed a lot, there was something about it that I so carefully and painstakingly tried to preserve. And I mean, nobody knows what this structure, what this statue really exists for. In this particular shot, we can see that he has sort of a very painful or sick disfigured. He has huge eyes, and he has this shape of eyebrows that's sort of asking you for something, he's just pleading to you for something, and he looks like he's in pain. Maybe he's suffering, maybe he's, he wants something from you. That was my initial perception of it. And he holding this bowl actually sort of reinforced it, and it dictated and helped me define a lot of narrative ideas that I had for this environment. Because if you look carefully through the diary that sort of, pans through the screen at the beginning of the video, that you can check out on my website or just following the links in the description, it actually has a line that says, "Giving up the hope to return, you will be let in." You let in this environment, this secret environment that we're showcasing in the video. And what it actually meant is that since it is a desert, the only hope you can have there is water. So you were supposed to give up water in order to come in, and that's what our character does. I mean, he pours just a few drops left from his canteen, and that actually triggers the chain of events that allows him to enter. But this guy and his facial expression really drive the invention of this, basically, and I hope that my design actually also tried to show the pain, the suffering, and yet some sort of a plea in his eyes as he stands and looks at you with his bowl, probably starving or just dying of thirst. And that was a really interesting point for me, because that's how your research, even though you change your initial references a lot, that's how your research could really, really drive your storytelling and environment and everything in really unexpected ways. And even though this guy is really different in the way he looks in my composition, I really hope that I've managed to preserve and even, amplify what made him interesting for me. And that's sort of what an artist should do as far as I see. All art, if you, think about it, is an approximation of reality, because reality is comprised of so many different factors that we could never reproduce, just ideally the way they are in real life. So basically, art is about finding things that make reality believable, and then concentrating on them, and then trying to make your audience pay attention to them. And in order to do that, you need to amplify them, you need to exaggerate them, and that's what all of this is about. And I mean, even if we look at modern games, something so realistic like Battlefield 3, it still isn't the realisticness that makes it beautiful. It's the artistic choices, first of all, and I mean just the combination of the lens effects and lens flares. It doesn't happen that way in real life on every single piece of lenses or cameras or whatever you use. It was a conscious choice that made it feel so real, but it was actually quite an amplified and exaggerated effect. And that's what's amazing about it. So yeah, you should totally use it anywhere you want, whether you want to have stronger color. And I mean, if you ever done photography, then you probably could know that when you have some interesting place, when you found an interesting location for a shoot, and you realize that, hey, I can do really cool photos in there. But if it's an outdoor location, then you could have wrong lighting. Or you could have a cloudy sky in the background, or you could wait for a sunset that would have this beautiful pinkish or just saturated red tones. That could be what you're waiting for. And the thing is that you actually found the perfect spot, could end up waiting like for weeks or even months until you have ideal conditions, when all the things you want come together. But when you're a CG artist, you don't have to wait for all of that. And that's like the beauty of it, because you can take every single thing that you think makes this particular environment beautiful, or could make this particular environment beautiful, even though they come in all together at a single moment in time is pretty unlikely in real life. You can do that in your artwork. You just collect everything that's beautiful about something and you just display all of it. Just not holding back and not saying that, hey, I've never seen on my pictures this kind of strong lighting or something, but yeah, but you've seen it in some other place, so you can transfer that knowledge, and that will make your environments that much richer. That's basically the point of exaggeration. It's about realizing what details, what traits make the impression you want to convey, which traits convey the sense of reality, and then you just focus on, or not reality if that's what you're working for, and then you just concentrate on conveying them first and foremost, and just making everything else, not stick out and not create a bad impression. So that's what exaggeration is all about, and even someone who thinks that he makes realistic stuff actually does it as well. So yeah, don't let yourself be confused, and well, be conscious about it, because it could help you out a great deal. Moving on. Okay, final point number 5, which is Texas. And I guess it got a lot of you guys pretty confused about what the hell is this. Even in the original video, in the credits where you have this technical features showcase, and then you have just Texas pop up, and I bet someone just went, just googling Texas, trying to figure out it was some kind of, new technology or something. But no, it isn't. It actually just that since people always overlook my Easter eggs, or just, maybe they notice it but they never tell me about it, I just thought I'd make it, really obvious. So the story behind Texas is simple. I was just working on the canyon part of my environment, and then I thought to myself, hey, Texas. So I went ahead and just did this, light beam that you see in the beginning that just shines a bright spot on the ground in the form of Texas, because Texas has a pretty cool shape. So yeah, all you Texans feel free to feel proud about your state shape, and that's basically all that Texas is about. But I feel it's kind of fun and pretty crucial actually to make fun of yourself and your work at times, and just, put in these little quirky details. And I mean, if you look back to my previous doc environment, you can see that it always had, a pinch of unseriousness in the video. And even furthermore, the ship's name actually was a Latin word for having a juicily shaped buttocks. I mean, there is a word for that, and it was a Latin one. That was kind of fun, and I thought I should put that in there too. And for example, if you go all the way back to my Vice City or Miami and disco area inspired environment, you can see that there is a whole lot of stuff there as well, like the John Travolta newspaper running for president, and I don't know, the flyers from such awesome bands as GBs and Baba. So yeah, it was kind of a lot of fun, and don't get confused. I hope you just enjoy this little sort of an inside joke. And now you know what Texas is all about. So yeah, I just needed a hook to keep you interested up until the very end. So yeah, thank you very much guys for checking this stuff out. I really hope you enjoyed it, and it means a lot that you sat through this whole huge big ass making of video that is more like an audio, but still, well, and I must honestly hope that this was useful for you, and it will help you improve faster and make absolutely stunning stuff. And well, make sure to share, because I would love to see what you come up with. So yeah, thank you very much guys, and have a great time. It was Andrew Maximov here for you from ArtIsAVerb.info, and until the next time, cheers.